How are you doing today? My name is Maiko, and welcome to Mushroom News. This channel is dedicated to nothing about mushroom news. All of the editing you will be seeing done here is by our friend Christian over at Day-to-Day Photography. So if you like what you see, go down, click the link, and give the friend some love. And if you need anything recorded, his email address will be listed as well. So today we are going to be going over 4 amazing stories. And for our first story here, it's going to be a fun one. A bionic mushroom that generates electricity. In the quest to replace fossil fuels, scientists are always on the lookout for alternative environmentally friendly sources of energy. But who could have imagined a bionic mushroom that produces electricity? It sounds like something straight out of Alice in Wonderland, but researchers have now generated mushroom patterned with energy-producing bacteria and an electrode network. They report their results in the ACS journal Nano Letters. Many examples of organisms that live closely together and interact with each other exist in nature. In some cases, the symbiotic relationships is mutually beneficial. A team's researchers led by Manu Manor. What? The man's last name is Manor. Mannoor. I tell you right now, if you ever come across a man named Manu Manor, you trust that man. It's that easy. If their last name is Manor, you trust them, okay? No questions asked. And Sudeep Joshi from Stevens Institute of Technology wanted to engineer an artificial symbiosis between button mushrooms and cyanobacteria. In their scenario, the mushroom would provide shelter, moisture, and nutrients, while bacteria 3D printed on the mushroom's cap would supply energy by photosynthesis. Because we all know mushrooms don't photosynthesize, they're non-phototropic, you know. So now we're creating mushrooms that photosynthesize. Graphene nanoribbons printed alongside the bacteria could capture electrons released by the microbes during photosynthesis, producing bioelectricity. In a world where we're trying to get rid of fossil fuels, start using wind energy, solar energy, water, there's some charlatan people out there that can generate electricity with their mind. It probably will take 1 million little mushrooms to make probably a watt, but nonetheless, it's a step in the right direction. To make their bionic mushrooms a reality, the researchers first 3D printed an electronic ink containing graphene nanoribbons onto the cap of a living mushroom in a branch pattern. They then printed a bio-ink containing cyanobacteria on the cap in a spiral pattern, which intersected with the electronic ink at multiple points. At these sites, electrons could transfer through the outer membranes of the bacteria to the conductive network of graphene nanoribbons. Shining a light on the mushroom activated cyanobacterial photosynthesis, generating of a current of about 65 nanoamps. That is a very tiny amount of amperage. But nonetheless, it's amperage, and it's amps. Even though it's got the word nano in front of it, it's an amp. Although this current is insufficient to power an electronic device, the researchers say that an array of bionic mushrooms could generate enough current to light up an LED. The researchers are now working on ways to generate higher currents using the system. They say that this 3D printing approach could be used to organize other bacterial species in complex arrangements to perform usual functions such as bioluminescence. But hey, as you see, we're trying to find ways to make mushrooms make light. By all means, have some fun, friends. And like I say, if you ever come across a man named Manor, you really got to trust that man. He's got your best, especially if a man named Manor is a mycologist. What more of a sign do you need to trust somebody? It's all good. Alright, now for our second story. Fatal death cap mushroom may ultimately be a lifesaver. Go figure. First it wants to hurt you, then it wants to help you. Doesn't know what it wants to do. A deadly fungus that took the life of a 3-year-old boy in British Columbia 2 years ago may yet yield a life-saving cure. Among the unique compounds found in the death cap mushrooms is one that can be used to kill some kinds of cancer cells. The toxin amanitin applied to pancreatic cancers cured 60% of mice with cancer in a 2012 study. So the study goes back a little bit. Experts say the death cap accounts for about 90% of all the fatal mushroom poisonings worldwide. That's a lot of people that don't understand identification and don't understand you absolutely do not eat it unless you are absolutely willing to risk everything. If you do not know what a wild mushroom is, you admire it from a distance, take a picture, and let it be. Just like you would want to have, like, if some big wild animals are like, there they are, you're going to want him to be like, I'm going to let him be. Leave that mushroom be. In North America, the resemblance between newly sprouted death caps and straw mushrooms have caused the deaths of dozens of Asian immigrants, particularly in California, according to a UBC chemist, David Perrin. This is the mushroom that gives all mushrooms a bad name, he said. There is no known antidote. Death cap may be also mistaken for the highly prized masuke or pine mushroom that grows in British Columbia. Locally, the dead fungus is confined mainly to the Oak Bay area under oak and chestnut trees, which it needs to survive. Typically, people who ingest a death cap mushroom become violently ill for a short time, then feel better for up to 10 days, at which time they die of liver failure. That's the bad news. The good news is that Perrin's lab has succeeded in synthesizing A-amanitin and the means to build better versions of it for medicinal uses. By customizing the molecule, Perrin aims to make it less toxic to the liver, selectively toxic to cancer cells, and create structures that will help it to attach to homing antibodies that will deliver its deadly payload directly to cancer cells. Researchers in Germany are in trials with A-amanitin, a compound derived from wild mushrooms, but only tiny amounts of the toxins can be extracted from wild mushrooms, and collecting them is dangerous. Larger amounts of the compound will be needed as research progresses from petri dish scale to medical trials, to say nothing of the amounts required for commercial sales. And even if you have enough of the natural toxin, you can't really modify it, says Perrin. Our goal is to build a derivative with specific toxicity, and that's not something you can do working with a natural compound. Some of amanitin's precursors building blocks are so delicate that they blow apart when exposed to air or light, what makes it tricky to complete all the steps required to synthesize the final molecule without ruining it. It requires a choreography of different reactions, and each product along the way has to be compatible with each reaction and the next, plus it has to be high yielding, he said. Perrin is excited by the success other groups are having with cancer treatments in animal models, particularly in pancreatic cancer cells. If it translates to humans, that's huge, he said. Pancreatic cancer is uniformly a death sentence. That was a pretty interesting story. You know, you're taking a death cap mushroom that is known for 90% of bad things happening to people who eat wild mushrooms, and now we're trying to make a good thing happen from it. I can't find anything wrong with that. It also makes you wonder what other properties these fungal friends of ours have. I mean, so little is known about them. You know, it's going to be an amazing world in 200 years with what we know. Just imagine all the regulations and things, jurisdictions getting lifted from them, and people actually being able to study them in an open way without fear or anything. I mean, that's when you're really going to see magic happen, you know. Right now, the cordyceps is the magical mushroom. Nobody wants to give it that name. Alright, so we're going to get on over here to our last article. This is going to be from Johns Hopkins, good old Johns Hopkins University newsroom. This article was written on November 4th, 2020. Psychedelic treatment with psilocybin relieves major depression, study shows. That's beautiful. People don't realize how many people have mental illness. So many people don't even understand that they have their own mental illness and they're delusional that they don't. It's a beautiful thing. It's all good, you know. It's the best way I can think of it. It really is. And if it isn't, it's temporary. Get over it. You'll be good in about 20 minutes. And if not, give it an hour. And if you're not good in an hour, shut up. Come back tomorrow and tell me how you feel. If you're not feeling better tomorrow, I'll give you a hug. Because at some point it will get better. And if it doesn't, guess what? It's your responsibility to deal with it and make it positive. All right. In a small study of adults with major depression, Johns Hopkins medicine researchers report that 2 doses of a psychedelic substance, psilocybin, given with supportive psychotherapy, produced rapid and large reductions in depressive symptoms, with most participants showing improvement and half of study participants achieving remission through the 4-week follow-up. All right, so that's saying that if you had 8 people go through, 4 people, they were showing signs of improvement. That's amazing. That's half. In 2016, Johns Hopkins medicine researchers first reported that treatment with psilocybin under psychologically supported conditions significantly relieved anxiety and depression in people with life-threatening cancer diagnosis. Now, the findings from the new study, published November 4th in JAMA Psychiatry, suggest that psilocybin may be effective in a much wider population of patients who suffer from major depression than previously appreciated. The magnitude of the effect we saw was about 4 times larger than what clinical trials have shown for traditional antidepressants on the market, says Alan Davis, PhD, because most other depression treatments take weeks or months to work and have many undesirable effects. This could be a game changer if these findings hold up in future gold standard placebo-controlled clinical trials. The published findings cover only a 4-week follow-up in 24 participants, all of whom underwent 2 5-hour psilocybin sessions under the direction of the researchers. Because there are several types of major depressive disorders that may result in variation of how people respond to the treatment, I was surprised that most of our study participants found the psilocybin treatment to be effective, says Roland Griffiths, PhD, the Oliver Lee Maccabee Third Professor in the Neuropsychopharmacology of Conscious at the Johns Hopkins University School of Medicine and Director at the Johns Hopkins Center for Psychedelic and Conscious Research. He says the major depression treated in the new study may have been different than the reactive form of depression in patients they studied in 2016 cancer trial. Griffith says his team was encouraged by public health officials to explore psilocybin's effect in the broader population of those with major depressive disorder because much of the larger potential public health impact. For the new study, the researchers recruited 24 people with a long-term documented history of depression, most who had experienced persisting symptoms for approximately 2 years before enrolling in the study. The average age of the participants was 39. 16 were women and 22 identified themselves as white. One person identified as Asian, and 1 person identified as African American. Participants had to taper off any antidepressants prior to the study with the help of the personal physician to ensure safe exposure to this experimental treatment. 13 participants received the psilocybin treatment immediately after recruitment and after preparation sessions, and 11 participants received the same preparation and treatment after an 8-week delay. Treatment consisted of 2 psilocybin doses given by clinical monitors who provided guidance and reassurance. The doses were given 2 weeks apart between August 2017 and April 2019 at the Johns Hopkins Bayview Medical Center Behavioral Biology Research Building. Each treatment session lasted approximately 5 hours, with the participant lying on a couch wearing eye shades and headphones that played music in the presence of monitors. All participants were given the GRID, Hamilton Depression Rating Scale, a standard depression assessment tool upon enrollment, and 1 at 4 weeks following the completion of their treatments. On the scale, a score of 24 or more indicates severe depression, 17 to 23 moderate depression, 8 to 16 mild depression, and 7 to less no depression. At enrollment, participants had an average depression scale rating of 23. But 1 week and 4 weeks after treatment, they had an average depression scale score of 8. At enrollment, participants had an average depression scale rating of 23. But 1 week and 4 weeks after treatment, they had an average depression scale rating score of 8. After treatment, most participants showed a substantial decrease in their symptoms, and almost half were in remission from depression at the follow-up. Participants in the delayed group didn't show decrease in their symptoms before receiving the psilocybin treatment. For the entire group of 24 participants, 67% showed more than a 50% reduction in depression symptoms at the 1-week follow-up and 71% at the 4-week follow-up. Overall, 4 weeks post-treatment, 54% of participants were considered in remission. That's more than half. Can't argue with numbers. Meaning they no longer qualified as being depressed. I believe this study to be critically important proof of concept for the medical approval of psilocybin for treatment of depression, a condition I have personally struggled with for decades, says entrepreneur and philanthropist Tim Ferriss, who supported the funding campaign for the study. How do we explain the incredible magnitude and durability of effects? Treatments researched with moderate to high doses of psychedelics may uncover entirely new paradigms for understanding and improving mood and mind. This is a taste of things to come from Johns Hopkins. The researchers say they will follow the participants for a year after the study to see how long the antidepressant effects of the psilocybin treatment last, and will report their findings in later publications. Griffiths, whose research with psilocybin begun in the early 2000s, was initially viewed by some with skepticism and concern. Says he is gratified by Johns Hopkins' support and heartened by the dozens of startups and research labs that have followed suit with their own research. He says numerous companies are now actively working to develop marketable forms of psilocybin and related psychedelic substances. According to the National Institute of Mental Health, more than 17 million people in the U.S. and 300 million people worldwide have experienced major depression. Other authors on the study include Frederick Barrett, Derek May, Mary Casamano, Nathan Cepeda, Matthew Johnson, and Patrick Finnan, all of Johns Hopkins. The study was supported by philanthropic donors, the Stephen and Alexandria Cohen Foundation, Tim Ferriss, Matt Mullenweg, Craig Narenberg, Blake Mikowski, and Dave Murren, as well as by grants from the River Styx Foundation and the National Institute of Drug Abuse. What I'm about to say next is 1000% personal experience. What happened for me most likely won't happen for anybody else. What I say is not meant to be applied in your life in any way, shape, or form. It's subjective. That's the only way I can say it because I only know my own experience. I quit smoking cigarettes on a high dose of psilocybin. That was one of the weirdest experiences of my life. I went into it and went and did 3 weeks of mental preparation before I went into it. Told my girl my quit date. And the best way I can describe that journey is the ghost of Christmas past, where she comes up to you and takes you back. Well, she took me back to where I first smoked a cigarette, and instead of me feeling a euphoric effect from that cigarette, I ended up throwing up and vomiting black tar. I haven't had a cigarette since that date. I cannot explain that experience. I'm curious about what music they were playing and why the shades. I understand that, yes, sometimes the show is best on the back of the eyes, meaning close your eyes. But I also understand past a certain point it doesn't matter what you want. You can put whatever music on, you can close your eyes, it has no matter. The sentience of the fun guys is going to do what they're going to do. But hey, that's just my thoughts. Don't listen to me. And now for our last story. Scientists have discovered a new species of glowing mushrooms found growing on dead bamboo in India. A team of researchers from India and China report on 2 weeks of fieldwork in the Assam region, during which they spotted several new species of mushrooms. The most exciting of these species, that locals describe as the electric mushroom, that lives on dead bamboo. The species, christened Rhabdomyces phyllostocitus, is bioluminescent, and it produces its own light, which is bioluminescence. Most likely I've butchered the last name. I apologize. The species may be new to science, but locals have known about it, and they have used it for quite a while now. They have been employing bamboo sticks with these glowing mushrooms growing on them as natural torches at night, for example. It only grows on dead bamboo, the team explains, although it is not immediately apparent why. It may be the case that the bamboo substrate offers special conditions or resources that the fungus prefers, according to a scientist. But until the issue is researched more thoroughly, we can't know for sure. This is the first place of the genus Rhabdomyces to be discovered in India, the team adds. The team recovered several samples of the mushrooms, dried them, and performed a genetic analysis to understand where it fits in the tree of life. Both morphological features and genetic heritage supports its position as a new species in the genus Rhabdomyces. Currently, 12 other species are known in this genus, and 5 of them are known to be luminescent. The team named the species Psilocybin after the genus of the host bamboo tree from which it was collected. Now, I'm not sure if the honey mushroom is part of the Rhodamyces genus. That's just off the top of my head. But if you look at honey mushrooms towards the bottom where the mycelium actually turns into the fruiting body, it's actually bioluminescent down there. It's pretty cool. During the day, they look pretty unassuming. However, at night, they glow with a clear green light, but only from its stipes and mycelia, which are the rough equivalent to the roots that are burrowing into the bamboo. The mushroom's brown caps do not emit any light. So why does it glow? Bioluminescence is most commonly seen in ocean environments rather than on dry land, although fireflies are an example of the latter. It is typically used to attract attention either for hunting or to coax insects into visiting a plant and spreading its pollen or seeds around. Of about 120,000 described fungus species, around 100 are known to be bioluminescent. Only a handful of these are native to India. This is likely due to the fact that there aren't enough trained specialists to go out and look for new species and document those that have already been discovered, a scientist argues. Bioluminescent fungi commonly grown on decaying wood and are able to feed on the lignin in plant debris. Lignin is a structural component of the walls and plant cells which give them their stiffness. The largest genus of bioluminescent fungi we know is of the Mycena. The genetic studies of the Mycena suggest that this trait evolved around 160 million years ago. The paper Rhodamyces psilocybin is a new bioluminescent fungus from northeastern India, has been published in the journal Phytotaxa. And it's at this point in time I'd like to thank you for your time. It's all we have. It doesn't exist. We're learning as we go, so drop your criticism down below. If you stayed this long, please give it a thumbs up. I mean, motivation. And I love mushrooms, so I mean, this is stuff that I normally just look up as it is. Been subscribed to Johns Hopkins for a long time, so I'm a fan. Drop your criticism down below. Hold the door for a stranger. Wear tie-dye every day, friends. I appreciate you. Ta-ta. That's gonna mess some of you up, isn't it?